I still remember the first time I saw the sky of Zarth Prime. It wasn't blue. It was a deep metallic silver, rippling like liquid steel under twin suns. I stood on a polished obsidian platform, my wrists bound in ceremonial gold cuffs, while an audience of towering alien nobles watched in absolute silence. Their eyes glowed in shades of crimson and violet. Their armor hummed with living energy. And at the far end of the platform stood the one they intended for me, General Varric, conqueror of 100 star systems, executioner of rebellious worlds, the iron fist of the Zarth Dominion, and apparently my future husband. I was human, a linguistics officer from Earth's first diplomatic fleet. We had come seeking peace. Instead, we found ourselves outmatched, surrounded and cornered. When negotiations failed, the Dominion did not declare war. They did something far more terrifying. They made a demand. To prevent Earth's destruction, I would marry their greatest general. I would serve as a symbol, proof to the galaxy that humanity had submitted willingly. My body, my life, my future, traded for billions of lives. My superiors called it a necessary sacrifice. I called it a cage. As the alien priest raised his staff and began the binding rite, I felt the weight of countless eyes. The galaxy watching, waiting, and somewhere inside me, something cold and sharp took shape. If they wanted a symbol, then I would become one they would never forget. The wedding of chains. The ceremony lasted 3 hours. Zarth rituals were slow, deliberate, meant to grind resistance into dust. They painted my skin with luminous sigils that burned like ice. They placed a circlet of black crystal on my head that whispered in a language I didn't know. And finally, before their star gods and their empire, I was bound to Varric. He was enormous, over 7 feet tall, plated in dark bio-armor that pulsed with crimson veins. His face was carved like stone, eyes glowing amber like twin suns. When he spoke, the air trembled. "You are mine," he said, not cruelly, but as if stating a universal law. I met his gaze. I belonged to no one. A ripple of shock passed through the court. Varric studied me, then made a rumbling sound that might have been amusement. "We shall see, little human." They led me to his warship that same day. Not a palace, not a home, a battleship. The flagship of the Dominion's Black Armada. My new husband lived among engines of destruction, surrounded by soldiers bred for conquest. I was placed in chambers made of living metal that shifted with every step. There were no windows, no clocks, no sense of time, only the hum of a war machine preparing to devour the galaxy. The general and the prisoner. Days passed, or weeks. I wasn't sure. Varric visited me only once at first. He stood in the doorway like a looming shadow. "You will learn our ways," he said. "You will bear heirs who will bind our species forever." I felt my stomach twist. "I will do neither," I replied. His eyes narrowed. "Defiance is expected. It will fade." He turned and left. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. I realized then that he didn't need to threaten me. The situation itself was the threat. My world held hostage by an empire that believed itself eternal. But I was not helpless. They had brought me aboard because I was a linguist. I understood language, meaning, symbols, and empires ran on symbols. If I could not fight them with weapons, I would fight them with ideas. Learning the enemy, I requested access to the Dominion's archives, to study their culture, their laws, their history. To my surprise, Varric allowed it. Perhaps he thought knowledge would tame me. He was wrong. In the data vaults, I discovered the truth of the Dominion. They were not a united species by choice. They were conquerors who ruled through fear. Countless civilizations existed under their banner, forced to serve, stripped of identity, punished for rebellion. But there was something else. A weakness. The Dominion revered strength above all else. Their social order depended entirely on the belief that the Zarth were invincible, that no one could stand against them. If that belief cracked, the Empire would fracture. I knew what I had to do. I needed a voice, a way to speak not just to Varric, but to the entire Dominion. And fate provided it sooner than I expected. The Festival of Dominion. Once every cycle, the Black Armada gathered in orbit of Zarth Prime. A festival broadcast across the galaxy. A display of power. A reminder to all subject worlds who ruled them. As the general's consort, I was expected to appear beside him. I walked onto the grand balcony, overlooking thousands of warships and millions of soldiers. The crowd roared in unison, a thunder that shook the sky. Varric raised his clawed hand for silence. "Behold," he announced, "the human who binds Earth to the Dominion." Every camera in the Empire focused on me. My heart pounded. My palms were cold. But my mind was steady. I stepped forward. "I was brought here as a symbol of surrender," I said, my voice amplified across the galaxy. "But I have learned what the Dominion truly is. Not strength, not honor, only fear." A stunned silence fell. Varric turned sharply. "Stop." But it was too late. "To the worlds you have conquered," I continued, "you are not alone. To the soldiers forced to fight wars they did not choose, you are not alone. Empires built on fear collapse the moment fear dies." Varric seized my arm. "Enough." I looked directly into the camera. "And today, I kill that fear." Security rushed forward. Varric's grip tightened. But across the Dominion, seeds had been planted. And seeds, once sown, cannot be unmade. The spark. They threw me into a containment cell. Alone. No light. No sound. Hours later, Varric entered. His armor flickered with rage. "You have endangered Earth," he growled. "You think words can kill an empire?" I met his gaze calmly. "Yes," I said, "because your empire lives only as long as people believe you cannot be challenged." His fist slammed into the wall beside my head, denting living metal. "You are my consort, my possession." I smiled bitterly. "Then kill me, and turn me into a martyr. Prove to the galaxy that you fear one human voice." He froze, because he understood. If he executed me publicly, rebellion would ignite faster. If he kept me alive, I remained a symbol of resistance. For the first time, the great general of the Dominion had no perfect move. He left without another word. The fires of rebellion. Weeks later, reports began to arrive. A mining colony refusing tribute. A slave battalion laying down arms. A conquered species disabling a Dominion command node. Tiny acts of defiance. But across a galactic empire, tiny acts become a wave. Varric spent his days in war councils. His nights pacing outside my cell. He did not speak to me again. Until the day the alarms began. The Black Armada was under attack. Not by a single fleet, but by dozens. Former subject worlds had risen together. They had stolen Dominion technology, reprogrammed warships, turned the Empire's own weapons against it. Zarth Prime itself came under siege. The unthinkable was happening. The Dominion was losing. The choice. Varric entered my cell one last time. His armor was cracked. His eyes dimmed. "You began this," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "He studied me for a long time." "Your species is dangerous," he said. Not for your weapons, but for your will. I said nothing. He deactivated the cell door. You may leave, he said. Return to Earth. If I kill you, the rebellion burns hotter. If I keep you, I remain your jailer. Either way, the Dominion falls. I stepped past him. Why let me go? I asked. He looked toward the distant rumble of explosions. Because perhaps the galaxy deserves something new. For the first time, I saw not a conqueror, but a soldier who had finally seen the cost of conquest. I left him standing alone in a dying empire. The price the galaxy paid. I returned to Earth months later, escorted by ships of newly freed worlds. Humanity greeted me as a hero, but I did not feel like one. Millions had died in the Dominion's collapse. Wars never end cleanly. Chains break violently. Yet across the galaxy, civilizations rose where once they had knelt. Languages returned. Cultures reborn. Worlds once stripped bare began to heal. And somewhere in the ruins of Zarth Prime, it was said that General Varric faced his people and accepted their judgment. Not as a tyrant, but as the last relic of a fallen order. I never saw him again. But sometimes, when I look at the stars, I remember the silver sky of Zarth Prime. The moment they tried to turn me into a symbol of surrender. And how instead, I became the spark that burned an empire down. They forced me to marry an alien general, and the galaxy paid the price. The war ended not with a final battle, but with silence. Weeks after I left Zarth Prime, the Dominion's core worlds surrendered one by one. Their fleets, once unstoppable, drifted powerless in orbit as newly freed civilizations reclaimed their skies. The great empire that had terrified the galaxy for centuries dissolved into scattered remnants, leaderless and broken. I watched the news feeds from Earth's orbital station. Alien delegates filled the assembly halls, species once forbidden from speaking freely now arguing, debating, shaping a new order. The galaxy had entered an age no one had planned for. Freedom. But freedom had a cost. Some worlds had burned before they could rise. Some cultures were lost forever. Some children would grow up knowing war as their inheritance. I carried those ghosts with me, a weight that never left my chest. One night, unable to sleep, I walked to the station's observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly before me. Somewhere among them was Zarth Prime, its silver sky now darkened by the fires of its own collapse. A soft voice spoke behind me. History will call you a liberator. I turned. It was Ambassador Rel of the Veari, once slaves of the Dominion, now free. I don't feel like one, I said. He inclined his head. Empires do not fall without suffering. But because of you, children across 1,000 worlds will grow up unchained. That matters more than the pain of the transition. I exhaled slowly. Somewhere, deep in my memory, I saw Varric standing in the ruined halls of his empire. A general bred for conquest, finally watching the universe move beyond him. I wondered if he still lived. If he looked at the same stars and understood what had happened. I would never know, but I knew this. They had forced me to marry an alien general to save my world. Instead, I had changed the fate of a galaxy. Not with weapons, not with armies, but with a voice that refused to bow. And in the quiet after the storm, as a new era began among the stars, I finally allowed myself one small, victorious smile. The cage was gone. The galaxy was free. And my story, our story, had only just begun.